the aircraft still with you?
Say again?
Is the aircraft still with you?
Now approaching from the southwest, aircraft's hovering on top of me again. It's hovering and it's not an aircraft.
Cases of planes disappearing are rarely ever concluded. Instead, they are always tainted in mystery and conspiracy. This particular case is exactly that. The year is 1978, and a pilot is about to disappear. The pilot in question is 20-year-old Australian Frederick Valentich. A novice pilot with 150 hours flight time and obtaining a rating that allows him to fly at night, Valentich was a seemingly abled pilot. So what caused a seemingly experienced pilot to mysteriously disappear? It is a clear and calm evening on October 21st, 1978, and Frederick Valentich has rented a Cessna 182 registered VHDSJ on a 232-kilometre flight from Moorabbin Airport to King Island. Valentich would inform his briefing officer and an operator that he intended to fly to King Island Airport to pick up some friends. Valentich would board with 4 life jackets and depart at roughly 6:19 PM. However, only an hour into his flight, at approximately 7:06 PM, Valentich would contact air traffic control in Melbourne.
Delta Sierra Juliet. Is there any known traffic below 5,000 feet?
No known traffic.
Seems to be a large aircraft below 5,000 feet.
What type of aircraft is it?
I cannot confirm. It's 4 bright, seems to me like landing lights. The aircraft has just passed over me at least 1,000 feet above. Is there any Air Force aircraft in the vicinity?
No known aircraft in the vicinity.
Seems to be playing some sort of game. He's flying over me. Delta Sierra Juliet, it's not an aircraft.
Can you describe the aircraft?
As it's flying past, it's a long shape. I cannot identify it. It has such speed. It's before me right now, Melbourne.
How large would the object be?
Seems like it's stationary. What it's doing right now is orbiting. The thing is just orbiting on top of me. It's also got a green light and a sort of metallic, like, it's shiny on the outside. It's just vanished. That strange aircraft's hovering on top of me again. It's hovering and it's not an aircraft.
Before all contact was lost, a loud, metallic scraping sound can be heard before the transmission cuts out. A 4-day search by sea and air, covering over 1,000 square miles of the Bass Strait, would return empty-handed. The Australian Department of Transport would conduct an investigation into his disappearance, but with a lack of any sufficient evidence, the investigation would be unable to determine the cause, and Frederick Valentich is presumed dead. As news of his mysterious disappearance begins to leak into the local media, the description given by Valentich, 4 bright lights, a green light, erratic and unpredicted movements, and the famous "it's not an aircraft," piqued the interest of many UFO enthusiasts, claiming what Valentich saw wasn't of this world. And they may have a point. The Australian Air Force received 11 reports from people along the Victorian coast claiming they witnessed an unidentified flying object of some form around the same time Valentich disappeared. Now, whether these reports implied aliens cannot be discerned. However, curiously, each report claimed the same thing, a bright green light. According to the Victorian UFO Research Society, there were previous reports of ongoing UFO sightings 6 weeks leading up to the incident. But by far the most puzzling but skeptical story is that of the farmer from Cape Otway. A farmer would claim the day after Valentich disappeared, he witnessed a UFO as clear as day above his rural property. This UFO, metallic in nature, with a bright green light. However, it was the claim that he saw smashed into the side of the UFO was the remnants of a plane. So disturbed by this, the farmer etched the tail number of the plane into his tractor. The tail number is an exact match to the Cessna that Frederick Valentich flew the night of his disappearance. The report is met with obvious skepticism, but the farmer's tale, alongside the numerous reports of a bright green light, would be an extraordinary coincidence. What are the chances multiple people reporting the same thing the same night at the same time? Assuming Valentich followed his original flight plan, he would have been in the general vicinity of Cape Otway at around the same time he radioed air traffic control. So speaking of an extraordinary coincidence, could it be that reports of a light aircraft making an unexpected and unusual landing in the local area of Cape Otway at around the same time of the incident be none other than Frederick Valentich? Was Valentich abducted, or did he stage one of the most brilliant disappearances in aviation history? Frederick Valentich was an avid believer in UFOs, with his own father claiming that Valentich used to study them, and believed that one day they would attack him, even going as far as describing him as being a flying saucer enthusiast. Is it possible that instead of a UFO abduction, what we have is a staged disappearance from a pilot wishing to give credence to his beliefs and start a new life? The first suspicion comes from Valentich's girlfriend. During the investigation, investigators reported his girlfriend seeming oddly calm. It was reported she enjoyed the publicity surrounding her own boyfriend's disappearance, and gave the investigators the impression that she expected to see him again. However, arguably the most incriminating evidence is the discrepancies in Valentich's own story. Valentich had made it known that he intended on flying to King Island for some time, and his family, friends and girlfriend all believed the purpose of the flight was to bring back some crayfish. However, the night Valentich disappeared, he informed an operator and a briefing officer at Moorabbin Airport that he intended to bring back friends from the island. Unless your friends are crayfish, this is odd. Furthermore, it was discovered that not one friend of Valentich, or anyone at all, was awaiting his arrival at King Island Airport, whilst no order for crayfish was ever placed by Frederick Valentich. Frederick Valentich was aware that the King Island Flight Service Unit, whom controls most of the airport's basic functions, like lighting, was closed. Meaning if you intended on landing, you had to request for the airport to be lit up. Frederick Valentich did not do this, meaning Valentich was either an incompetent pilot, or simply had no intention to land at King Island Airport. Investigators also noticed that Valentich, during the communication with Melbourne Air Traffic Control, seemed relatively calm for the situation he was describing. He was described as being matter-of-fact and completely normal, and yet he had fears of being abducted by aliens, yet he remained completely calm. But if Valentich fabricated his disappearance, then what of all the similar reports of UFO activity? As it turns out, there is justified criticism in the reports that followed his disappearance. For example, the farmer's tale is indeed riveting. However, the farmer didn't come forward until 36 years after the incident, with both the farmer and or the tractor yet to be located. As for the witnesses reporting they saw a UFO, the reports didn't come in until after headlines revealed Valentich's transcript describing the apparent UFO. It is clear that Valentich, at the very least, is being deceptive. Why, however, we will never know. The evidence would seem to point the finger at Valentich, but it doesn't outright condemn him. But the holes in his own story either paint him as a deceiving schemer or an incompetent pilot. Which leads us to the third and final theory, that Frederick Valentich was exactly that. Five years after the incident, an engine flap would wash ashore Flinders Island. The Bureau of Air Safety Investigation asked the Royal Australian Navy about the likelihood that it could be a flap from Valentich's Cessna. The Navy would confirm that the part has indeed come from a Cessna. Furthermore, that the flap was in a certain range of serial numbers, one of which included Valentich's aircraft. If this engine flap is indeed from the Cessna, Valentich flew, then it would indicate that Valentich did indeed, at the very least, crash in some form. But how does someone crash whilst the weather is both clear and ideal for flying? In 2013, a team composed of an astronomer, a retired US pilot, and author Joe Nickell would look into this theory and review the data. They proposed that Valentich fell victim to an optical illusion called tilted horizon. The illusion tricks pilots in believing they are inverted, and when flying over open sea, especially during sunset or night, it can become disorienting. Valentich, with his lack of apparent experience, could have fallen for this illusion. Inverted, Valentich would have seen his Cessna reflecting off the water above him. He would have truly believed what he witnessed was a UFO. As for the reports of a plane making a mysterious and unusual landing in the area of Cape Otway, it is possible that what they saw wasn't a plane landing, but instead a plane crashing. A further look into Valentich as a pilot, and it becomes clear that he wasn't the most capable. Valentich was disqualified entry into the Australian Air Force due to his lack of educational qualifications, furthermore failing on multiple occasions to obtain a commercial pilot's license. Valentich was also involved in multiple flying incidents. He once flew into a controlled zone over the city of Sydney, and twice deliberately flew into a cloud when reported not to. Although this theory may conclude why he crashed, it fails to discuss the obvious deception, leaving us with more questions than answers. Due to this, it is not possible to conclusively determine the cause of his disappearance. But that doesn't stop you from concluding your own. Do you think it was alien intervention? Was Valentich a poor pilot? Or did he pull a trick of a lifetime?